study has 200 pounds of peanuts and 160 pounds of raisins. A batch of house mix takes 20 pounds of peanuts and 10 pounds of raisins. A batch of fancy mix takes 10 pounds of peanuts and 20 pounds of raisins. The profit from a batch of house mix is $50, and from a batch of fancy mix is $60. How many batches of each type should be made to maximize profits, and what is the maximum profit? All right. I have listed what you want to do in the order you should do it so that you can find the answer without trouble. So very first thing we want to do is called define the variables. Define our variables. We're going to have 3 of them. Your worksheet has 2 blanks. I apparently forgot a 3rd blank. We're going to have 3 of them. We're going to define our variables. So to find what your variables are, you look up here and you ask yourself, what do I have to solve for? If I have my final answer, what do I have to find? Batches of each and maximum profit. We have to find our profit. So there's batches of each. That's going to be 2 variables because there's 2 things. So I'm going to call X the number of batches, but of what? What's the first thing up here? Of house mix. And we'll call Y the number of batches of fancy mix. We are not taking shortcuts. We're not writing X equals house, because X does not equal house. X equals the number of batches of that particular kind. So X equals a number. And if you don't clarify that now, it's going to confuse you later. Not every single word problem we will do has to do with trail mix. Okay. Then the third one is profit. I'm just going to call that P, if that's okay. I'm actually using a capital P. And it stands for the profit in dollars. It does not stand for the highest profit. It stands for the profit. And then once we find all of our profits, then we will pick the highest profit. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find our objective function. I'm going to use a color for this one because I'm going to highlight some words. So our objective function you guys graphed for your assignment that we just graded today. The objective function for this one is going to come from the profit. How we're going to get that maximum profit is going to be our objective function. So I'm going to start with P equals. And then I look in the equation, and I'm looking for anything that has to do with the profit. So we look up here, and it says the profit from a batch of house. That's not supposed to be. Try that again. I meant to use highlighter. Let's try that again. There we go. The profit from a batch of house mix and the profit from a batch of fancy mix. We got $50 and $60. That's all profit. I highlighted that because it only has to do with profit. It's not going to be used for anything else. So I'm highlighting it so I know that I'm using it right now and I'm not going to use it again. So my profit equation is $50 per batch of house mix. So 50x plus $60 per batch of fancy mix. So 60y. So that is my objective function. That's how I get my profit. And we go to constraints. And the constraints are limitations on this graph. And we graphed constraints last night or whenever you did your homework. 2 of the constraints I've already given you, graphing wise, I've already given you, because what does your graph look like? Just the first quadrant. That means that x's and y's are only what kind of numbers? Or what are they not, I should say. They're not negatives. What does x stand for? Number of batches of house. Can we have negative batches of house mix? No. Can we have 0 batches of house mix? Yes. So 2 of the constraints I've already gone over and graphed it for you by giving you just the first quadrant, but you do need to write them down. Because I am seeing that you can come up with the constraints on your own. You do need to write this down. There are 2 more constraints. And I'm going to color code these constraints. The first constraint, a trail mix company has 200 pounds of peanuts. That's what they have. They can only use 200 pounds of peanuts. They cannot use more. So that is constraint. Is the number of peanuts, the pounds of peanuts, is a constraint. And when I'm looking up here, peanuts are used for the house mix and peanuts are used for the fancy mix. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight anytime I see peanuts, because all the peanuts go together in one constraint. All the peanuts go together in one constraint. So I'm kind of highlighting all those together. And then I'm going to write the equation, or the inequality. While I'm writing it, I would encourage you to show more work than you absolutely need. So when you go back and you look at these notes later, you know, remember what we did. So what I'm going to do before that line, I'm just going to write peanuts, so I know where these numbers came from. I wrote peanuts pounds. That's what this line has to do with. The equation has to be less than or equal to 200, because that's the most amount of peanuts that we have is 200 pounds. And for the house mix, it's 20 pounds of peanuts, so 20 pounds per house mix and 10 pounds per fancy mix. That has to be less than or equal to 200. So that's the total amount that we have. And then what's our other constraint in the problem? What's our other total? Our raisins. And that's in pounds also. But not every constraint is always going to be in pounds. Things will be different. So up here I'm going to go highlight anything that has to do with raisins. We've got a total of 160. We use 10 for the house and 20 for the fancy. So there's my raisins. So we have a total of 160, and we use 10 for the house and 20 for the fancy. So we have 4 constraints, and I had left you 4 lines for those, right? In the space off to the side, I'm going to move that down a little bit. In this space off to the side on your worksheet, that's where I'm going to use my, find the x and y intercepts before I graph. I'm just going to do it off to the side there. These are all in standard form. They're all going to be in standard form, I think, for this part. So I would encourage you to use x and y intercepts. I've been doing it since the second lesson of the year. So again, how do we find x and y intercepts? For the x-intercept, what do we do? And I'm color coding everything so you know which x-intercept I'm finding. What do you do for x-intercept? Plug in 0 for y. So in the equation, put 0 in for y. I have 20x equals 200. X is 10. Y-intercept. Plug in 0 for x. Plug in 0 for x. I have 10y equals 200, so y is 20. When you go to graph those, just so you know the graph I've given you, there's 20 little marks. So when you go to graph 0, 20, it's the top one. You don't want to have to count every single time. 20 of them. They're hard to see. So I'm going to graph my x and y intercepts, and we need a straight edge. I forgot to hand them out ones. I'll bring them over. If you already have a straight edge, you don't need one, just let me know while I'm handing them out. I'll send one back to you. I am going to, oh, and I also have to do shading for this one because it's an inequality. So when we have the less than or greater than symbols, we're going to have to shade. So I have to test the point to shade. And looks like I can test 0, 0 for this one. So I'm going to plug it in. And that's true. So I will shade towards 0, 0. Eventually, when I find the other one. So this is the same stuff that we've been doing in here. I'm going to do the same thing with the raisins. I'm going to find my x and my y intercepts, then I'm going to figure out my shading. So my x-intercept. My y-intercept is at 8. And then I'm going to test a point to see where to shade for that one too. I'll test 0, 0. Which is true, so I will shade towards 0, 0, and then I'll color in all the overlapping parts, just like we've been doing. And then I'll pause and make sure everybody catches up before I go on. There is a section on your worksheet that says sketch the graph. We are going to put something in that section, just so you know. There's a big empty spot. There's nothing there. And then on the part that says vertices, that's where we're going to test our vertices. Yeah, we're just going to, remember how we tested it for homework? That's what we're going to do on that line. So if you're working ahead, just heads up. Can't really read my mind very well, I know. So what we did for our assignment, the one that we graded today, you graphed it, and then you had to find your vertices, and then you had to test your vertices, and you were looking for max and minimum. This time we're just looking for whatever they asked. I'm going to list my vertices over by the graph, and I will test them on those lines. But I'm going to do something before that, and so you'll see just in one moment. But 0, 0, I know this vertex is the x-intercept, which I already found, so that's convenient that I already found it. And then the y-intercept right here I've already found, 8, 0, 8, I mean. And then this point right here I haven't found yet. Now, you will have some questions where that point is very obvious because you're very accurate and you did such a good job graphing, you could totally tell where they cross. But what if they cross at a decimal or a fraction? Are you going to be able to look at the graph and find it? Maybe not. So I can look at this graph and see the answer. It is what you think it is. It is. But I'm going to do the work like I couldn't figure it out. So that you have this other, method of finding where two graphs cross if you can't look at the picture and figure it out. So we've already learned the method. How do you find where two equations cross without graphing? Substitution or elimination. To find where two graphs cross without graphing, substitution or elimination. So I'm going to use substitution or elimination on my blue line and my green line. So looking at the blue equation and the green equation, should we use substitution or elimination? What looks easier? Well, it's a matter of opinion, I guess, but I'm going to use elimination. So I'm going to find the vertex by elimination, and hopefully it matches what my graph looks like. And we're going to do it with the 20x plus 10y, where you're just going to do the equals 200 because we just want to know where the lines cross, not where the whole shading crosses. So we're just doing equals. And then the green one, 10x plus 20y equals 160. I think I'll multiply the green one by -2 so that I can cancel out my x's. But I'm just using equal signs because I want to know where they equal each other. So I used elimination, I got rid of my x's, I solved for my y's, I got that y equals 4, and then you have to plug that back in to find your x. So we'll do, I'm running out of space, so I'm just going to go over here. You guys probably still have plenty of space. 20x plus 10 times 4 equals 200. X equals, subtract 40 from both sides, 160. X equals 8. We'll check on our graph. Does that look like it's 8,4? Does that validate our algebra that we just did? So then we're going to test our vertices. You did that in your assignment. You're going to test each vertex, and we're going to plug it into the objective function. Each one at a time into the objective function. So we'll do 50 times 0 plus 60 times 0. That's 0. 50 times 10 plus 60 times 0 is 500. 50 times 0 plus 60 times 8 is 480. And 50 times 8 plus 60 times 4 is 640. So now we've come to our solution. Our solution is not an ordered pair. This is a real-life situation. Our solution is going to be written in words like real-life answers. What is our answer? What's x? 640 is the profit. What's x? 8. And what does x stand for? The number of batches of house. So we're going to say 8 batches of house mix. And 4 batches of fancy mix. And then the B part of your answer would be, what is that maximum profit? So we'd say for max profit of $640. Oh, so satisfying. Well, it depends on the situation. They're not all really profit questions. But your answer should, you should answer the question that's asked. You've learned in English class to kind of repeat what's asked in your answer. You've learned that before, right? Well, now that you are getting into those high-level classes, all these classes are overlapping. And what you do in English class, you do in here too. When you are ready to go on, turn the page and read the next question, you start figuring any parts of it out. We're not going to be able to get through all of it, but I can at least maybe get you started on the next one. And I'll post all the answers on Canvas for the notes if you want the rest of them. And then we're going to do more of it tomorrow too. Same stuff. 2 days ago. So I have, I've given you, and you'll see it when you get the worksheet, I've given you a word problem in the graph. I did not give you blanks for everything that I did on the first example because you have to know what to write down, and all of those will be worth points. So as you're doing your assignment, you want to use the notes. What is the first thing in the notes that we need to write down on our paper? Define the variables. Can you figure out what they're asking you to solve for? What are they asking you to solve for in this one? How many questions of each type? What are the two types? So let's make X the number of multiple choice questions. Let's make Y the number of short answer questions. I'll write it up there. And there's one more variable you need to have. What's your objective? Well, your objective is to find the highest score, but variable-wise, it's just going to be score. Okay, so X is going to be the number of multiple choice, and Y is going to be the number of short answer. And then we'll call big S, score. And then once you find the possible scores, then you can pick your highest score from that. And then our objective function, how do you get your score? In the equation up here, what talks about how you get your score?
3x.
Nope, minutes doesn't give me a score. The score comes from multiple choice questions are worth 10 points, and short answer questions are worth 15 points. That gives me the score. So interpreting this is the hardest part. So multiple choice is going to be 10 points per question, so 10x, plus short answer 15y. That's our objective function. And then our constraints, we'll have two categories for constraints. Well, we'll have x and y can't, x has to equal greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0. There's two constraints right there. But when you're reading the question, one of the totals up there is the number of questions. You can't answer how many. No, you just told me time if you said 60.
16.
Oh, 16? Yeah, 16 is like the maximum. So 16 is the max, so everything's got to be less than or equal to 16. The number of questions that you answer, and you're going to answer some x's and some y's, so x plus y. And what's the other category up there? What other maximum do we have up there? Time. So time has a constraint of 60 minutes. And when we go up there, if I'm going to highlight 60 up there, then I'm going to highlight anything that has to do with minutes. That's what's going to make up my equation with the minutes, the 3 minutes and the 6 minutes. It'll be like 3x plus, was it 6 minutes? Is that what it was, 6-1? So that's the hard part, is just getting it set up. From there, you would graph them, find the shading, find the vertices, test your points, find your solution. Can we look at the last one real fast? I want to at least give you the setting it up. I know we don't have much time. Profit $134.20. Profit is $134 per moped and $20 per bike. All right, for this last one, they have some information where it says things like experience shows that they have to produce at least 10 mopeds. That means that's the minimum mopeds. Where I'm talking about x is greater than or equal to 0, it's actually x has to be greater than or equal to 10. Also, they can produce at most 60 mopeds. So the minimum mopeds and the maximum mopeds here, when I go to do my constraints, X is going to be between, what was it, 60 and 10. So when I go to graph that at 60 and at 10, which you probably have to change your scale at this point. Here's, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Here's 60. At 10 and 60, there's going to be two parallel lines, and you'd shade in between. And we've done that before, too. And then I believe there's a constraint on the bicycles also. Between 0 and 120, I believe the Y's would be. So you'd have two lines for bicycles also. Something like that. And then there's one more constraint on that one, but we're not going to have time. So your assignment is a worksheet. There's 3 of them. Do everything you can do and come with questions. And then on the back of the worksheet, there's also just 2 review questions. So come with questions. We'll spend more time on it tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. See me if you need help or if you're making something up. I'll see you later. 12, 20.